Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Mast, and welcome back to another patch notes video. Today we have a huge patch with both Set and Horus getting released. Hi-Rez isn't totally sure when the actual patch is going to come out quite yet. It looks like about 2 weeks from now, around the beginning of May or very end of April. But Set and Horus both getting released with this update, and I do have some video for you guys if you want to actually see what they look like as well. So we'll go through the abilities, see what they're like, but then also show some not screenshots, but some actual video of how they play as well, so you guys can get a real feel for them. So the first god is Horus. Horus is a warrior. The passive Resolute, each time Horus is damaged by an enemy god, Horus gains a stack of Resolute. If Set is the god damaging Horus, Horus gains 2 stacks. Now the idea here is basically Horus and Set are sort of opposites in their lore. So Hi-Rez does have a little bit, both in terms of their kits and in the way they actually interact with each other. Hi-Rez has a little bit of stuff where they kind of contradict each other and have a little bit of like a friendly, like kind of a rivalry type thing, which I think is a little bit cool. Each stack increases Horus's protections and crowd control reduction. Resolute stacks to a max count of 10 for 3 seconds. When Resolute fades, Horus is healed based on the amount of stacks. So this is up to 15 protections total, 1.5 per stack, up to 15% crowd control reduction. Again, that's 1.5% per stack. And then the heal is 2 plus 0.75 per level. So that would be, let's see, 17 per stack at level 20, right? 17 per stack at level 20. So that's pretty good, man. That's 170 heal potentially. So that's actually a decent amount. So potentially pretty strong passive, right? And at the very least, whether you're getting a lot of healing or not, the protections and the crowd control reduction is actually going to be a pretty nice boost if you're getting a lot of damage taken. And that is from gods, by the way. If you're getting damage taken from gods, not minions, not archers or anything like that, then you'll actually get quite a bit out of that passive. Updraft is Horus's first ability. Horus has a couple of weird abilities that we'll see here with the 1 and the 2, and we'll be able to show that through the video, kind of see how those work. But Horus uses his wings to create an updraft around himself, knocking nearby enemies into the air. Using the currents from the updraft, Horus's next basic attack within 5 seconds will create a gust of wind that travels forward, damaging enemies and slowing them for 2.5 seconds. Enemies that are knocked up when hit take bonus damage. So essentially, this is a knockup pretty similar to Pele's, not her 1, but her 2. Except it doesn't expand as you level it. It's a very, very close range ability that does okay damage, but then afterwards you also get a boosted auto attack that's kind of like similar to the size of about one of Isis's wing gusts. And if you actually have them knocked up while you hit the bonus auto attack, the gust, they take bonus damage as well, which is 1.5 times. So that's pretty strong. Essentially, that just means if you won and then auto attack really quickly after, you'll get that off. Or if somebody else has knocked them up, that works too. But otherwise, it's normally not going to do that bonus damage. If you're at all like delayed in doing that auto attack, it's not going to get the bonus damage there. But the gust glow of 25%, pretty strong. A little bit of bonus damage on the gust as well. Kind of an interesting ability. I think the idea here is you can knock them up and your team can initiate. And if they dash away or do some sort of movement to get away, you can slow them down at the end of it with the gust. Is I think the idea there, that you have a little bit of counterplay if someone's trying to escape away from you. Fracture, Horus's 2, is kind of an interesting ability. Horus dashes forward a short distance, ready to strike with his weapon. If Horus hits a god, he stops and stuns the god for 1.25 seconds. He'll then wind up a heavy cleave. Enemies hit have their protections reduced for 3 seconds. So this is basically a 2-part ability. You dash in, do damage, and then the cleave, if you hit it, if you hit the dash that is, the cleave will come right after that and do a good amount of damage as well. That's a lot of damage total, man. 170 on the dash, 190 on the cleave at max rank. That's pretty strong, especially on a dash that is stunning. And then you're reducing protections as well, going from 10 to 30. So lots of damage, lots of protection reduction, lots of CC, pretty strong ability. It's not a super long dash. It is pretty quick. So you're not going to be able to have crazy range on it. But if you do get kind of into that mid-range area where you can land that, it's going to be a really strong ability. And it makes Horus pretty strong, man, because what's going to happen is you're going to be able to get that cleave, get a lot of damage, and then once that stun is ending, you can knock them up, which is a lot of CC right there to lock one person down. So unlike a lot of Guardians, I would say, and honestly, unlike some Warriors, Horus seems very, very focused on single target lockdown in kind of a mid-range area. I feel like a lot of Warriors don't have that level of CC, and this is getting kind of close to like Hercules range, but also less like Hercules is more just kind of obnoxious, more just destructive. He'll actually push people potentially away from teammates, whereas Horus is a lot more just reliable, just you're locked in place, and you can't move, whereas Hercules, you're bouncing people all over the place. So Horus's 3, Protector's Surge. Horus rushes to the aid of an ally. After selecting an ally, Horus will fly to their location before descending. This is very similar to Pele, or not Pele 3, Daji 3, by the way. Upon landing, the selected ally and all nearby allies have their health restored and gain protections for 3 seconds. So this can be an allied god, or an allied minion, or an allied, what would be, is there anything else? I was going to say like an allied buff, but that's not a thing. I guess that's all. Allied god or allied minion. So heal 50 to 250, which is pretty strong. Protection buff 10 to 30. So that's quite a bit of sustain and protections that you're granting when you land. And it's a really long range ability as well. I want to say it's 70 units, maybe 65 units. So you can go really, really far in order to help your teammate out. And ideally you'd be in a situation where, let's say you're playing like support Horus, and your lane gets ganked, your ADC gets ganked. So you rush over, you 3 to them, you heal them up, you give them protections, you turn with your 1 and your 2, and boom, you go from your ADC getting ganked and locked down to you locking down the jungler and being able to turn is kind of the idea of what makes Horus strong in this situation. So lots of single target stuff on his core abilities. He's able to really lock somebody down, and he's really able to help somebody out in a situation like that where they're getting really, really engaged on. All right, Horus's ultimate. This is a crazy ability. It's something, man. Let's just go through it. Horus sends a mirror image of himself into the sky that scouts for a location to fly to. Upon selecting a ground location, Horus will begin to channel for 2 seconds. Any ally near Horus after these 2 seconds are flown to the location Horus's image chose. Horus and his allies land with such force, enemies take damage and are knocked away from the landing location. Horus and his allies gain a protective shield upon landing. So basically, this is kind of Janus Ult 2.0, but it's much slower and much more focused on getting a large group of people potentially to a new location. So what's going to be interesting about this ability is that I think it has a lot of potential around sentry wards in the later stages of the game. If you have a sentry ward around an area and you know there's no vision, you can try and use that to your advantage, especially like somewhere in the jungle where you kind of have a little bit of like a hidden pathway or something where you're kind of out of vision. And you can group your teammates up. Probably don't want everybody, but 1 or 2 nearby, and just be ready for that Horus ult to zoom your allies in, because that's what you're doing here. Is you're able to choose a location and then teleport everyone around you to that location. Now, it's worth noting there is an actual channel after you select the location, and that's what it says in the ability: 2-second channel after selecting ground location. And your allies during that time have the option to get out of it. So if you have a troll, or if you have somebody that just seems, you feel like he made a bad decision, or it's maybe just not what you thought, and so you're like, oh, I probably don't want to be in that, then you can leave the circle. They have those 2 seconds to get out. It's also worth noting, I believe, I couldn't tell for sure when I was looking at it, it looked to me like the allies in the circle will be teleported based on their position in the circle, which makes sense. I don't know why that wouldn't be true. So it looks like you can actually preemptively position yourself in the circle to try and be in a better position where you come out on the other side, if that makes any sense. So if you actually wanted to teleport your whole team, you all probably want to kind of take different corners of the circle so you're not all grouped completely on the same spot, since you're all close together to begin with, which I think is kind of interesting. But really high damage ability, 150 to 550, so that's a lot of damage on the landing location. 160 to 480 shield, so that's a huge shield you're giving your allies in the area as well. So lots of potential in this ability, but because it's such a long channel time, it also leaves Horus really vulnerable. It's important to remember the mirror image is what he's sending into the sky. It's not himself. So Horus himself is actually down on the ground in that position, preparing for this ability. If you use this in combat or near combat, it's really easy to get engaged on and possibly die while you're trying to cast that ultimate. So lots and lots of danger for Horus on using this. You definitely want to be careful and not get wrecked while you're using it. There are probably some times where you'll kind of be a sacrificial lamb and you'll go up into the air and you'll be like, all right, I'm probably going to die, but maybe I can get my teammates out in time. Anybody who wants to like come into the area and try and teleport out. So you can make some really interesting clutch plays too, where maybe Horus will die, but his teammates can run in as the teleport's going off and get bounced away to wherever he chose. So yeah, crazy god, but that is not the only god that we get this patch. We also get Set. So Set is an assassin who has a passive very similar to Horus's passive, but kind of on the opposite side of things. Each time Set damages hang on. Let me slow down. Okay, I think we're good. Each time Set damages an enemy, Set gains a stack of Relentless. If Horus is the enemy damage, Set gains 2 stacks. Each stack increases Set's attack speed. Relentless stacks to a max count of 10 for 3 seconds, while Kingslayer is active, which is Set's ultimate. We'll get to that. Relentless has no maximum stack count, which is crazy. That is crazy, man, that his passive loses the cap, which remember is 10, and it's 2.5% attack speed per stack. So that's 25% attack speed you can gain from your passive, but when you pop your ult, that no longer applies. So you can keep attacking faster, and then keep building your passive, and then keep attacking faster, and keep building your passive, and it just goes on, right? Obviously, there's an attack speed cap, but that is kind of crazy what that's capable of doing. Silver Branch theoretically might actually be good. For once, Silver Branch, kind of a garbage item. People seem to disagree with me sometimes, but generally speaking, it is considered a garbage item. But maybe a little better on set. And there's a chance Silver Branch got rebalanced this patch. I haven't actually seen the items. I've only seen the gods so far. So we'll see about that in a little bit. We'll see if we get to that in the items. Skewer, Set's first ability. Set amasses his hatred, throwing it forward and damaging enemies caught in its path. Set's spawns are commanded when Set fires this attack, dashing toward a location Set determines. We'll kind of get to how that works in a second. The spawns will be in the second ability here. Enemies hit by either Skewer or a spawn's dash take damage and are slowed for 3 seconds. Any dash after the first will deal 40% damage. So Skewer itself does 70 to 230 damage with 80% power scaling. The spawns do 60 to 180 damage with 80% power scaling and have a dash range of 60 feet. And the cooldown on Skewer is 7 seconds, which is a super low base cooldown. Very few abilities for that low cooldown. So it's good to keep that in mind. So how does this work? Spawn of Set is Set's second ability, where he conjures a spawn of himself made of sand. These spawns will stand where summoned and attack nearby enemies. Set can have up to 2 charges of this ability, allowing him to conjure spawns in quick succession. Essentially, that means similar to Pele 1, he can have 2 of these ability to cast at once. And similar to Pele 1, it won't automatically give him 2. It's just that he can basically charge up 2 of those cooldowns together. It would still take 26 seconds for him to get those 2 charges if he used both at the same time. Set can interact with these spawns with his other abilities, commanding them to attack or teleporting to them. Set can only have 8 spawns at any given time. Only 8? Only 8? That's too bad, man. I wanted 20. So yeah, basically the way this works with Skewer is Set will use his Skewer, and any spawns that he has out will actually dash in the same location he is targeting. So he can use that to not only deal more damage to an enemy that he is able to reach with Skewer, so he's able to dash one of the spawns through them, but he can also use this to launch a spawn where Skewer can't even reach. So he can launch multiple spawns in one location and do crazy burst damage if he lands them all, where they're dashing through the enemy, as well as landing Skewer. Or he can throw Skewer, direct the spawn, and get crazy sort of Thoth level range. I think higher than Thoth level range, right? Out of that spawn, because it's dashing 60 feet forward. That is a crazy amount of distance. And he can also summon those spawns pretty far away from himself. I'm actually not sure exactly how far. I want to say, based on what I remember from the patch notes, I think it was at least like 35 units, which is pretty good distance. So I think he can get around 100 foot, 100 unit range with that Skewer spawn combo, which is crazy. Now, it's not super high damage. Again, it's only 180 base, but it is 80% power scaling. So later in the game, maybe you want to snipe somebody, boom, 500 damage, just like that. How you like that? So could be interesting. Might have some cool things. But the big thing is how he's able to interact with lots of spawns at once with his ability. If he gets, let's say theoretically he gets like 5 spawns out there, that's going to be Skewer landing for its original damage, 1 spawn hitting for 100%, and then 4 others hitting for 40%. So you're looking at a crazy amount of damage. I mean, that should be going into the thousands, right? Maybe close to it, depending on power scaling, getting close to 1,000 damage if you hit every single one of those spawns plus the Skewer in one location. So lots of potential burst damage if you can get those spawns set up around Set. All right, and now Sandstorm, Set's third ability. Set conjures a sandstorm around him, protecting him from physical damage and causing him to be immune to slows. Enemies near Set are damaged every 0.4 seconds for 6 seconds. Really, really long cast time. That is a lot of ticks. How many ticks is that? Hang on, I'm trying to math. 15? Yeah, 15 ticks. That's a crazy amount. And have their vision obscured by the sands. So basically he gets an actual sandstorm effect, a unique effect that limits visibility. So kind of similar to a blind. So a little bit similar to Shibalanke's ult or Ra's blind. Lots of visual impairment. It's not as strong. It's only somewhat impairing, but it's actually a decent impact. And I could see that being kind of interesting in the game. At the very least, I think it's kind of immersive and a cool ability. If Set is targeting a spawn when this ability is cast, he will immediately teleport to the spawn. Otherwise, he can reactivate this ability to teleport. So basically, Set can teleport once during the sandstorm, and that gives him potentially some crazy mobility around his spawns that he's summoning, right? So he can cast Sandstorm. He doesn't need to teleport when he casts Sandstorm, but because he has cast Sandstorm, he can teleport. So this is not something that he needs to wait on, essentially. He doesn't need to wait for Sandstorm or wait before casting Sandstorm so that he can teleport. He can actually cast this, do damage, and then teleport to one of his spawns while Sandstorm is actively casting for that 6-second duration. So that's pretty interesting. It's a 65-foot teleport range, which is quite a bit. Remember, he can't teleport unless he's going to one of his spawns, though. So he's not going to be able to always move when he wants to, and maybe not have the precision that he would want to. But it also gives him a lot of potential to really play around those spawns and not only use them for damage, but also use them for movement and positioning, which I think is super interesting. All right, so Kingslayer Set's ultimate is going to be an interesting ability. I am curious what's going to happen with this one, man. So Set enrages, channeling his rage towards his enemies. Each time Set damages a god, they gain a mark of Set. At 4 marks, the target erupts. Enemies take a burst of damage while Set becomes empowered, restoring health and immediately gaining a charge of spawn of Set. Excess charges are immediately consumed, causing a spawn to appear near Set. So damage increase 25 to 85 plus 25% of your physical power, heal of 30 to 90 plus 20% of your physical power, and a duration of 12 seconds. So essentially what is happening here is Set is gaining bonus damage. Set is able to heal himself when he's gaining those marks, and when the enemy erupts, right? And then Set is also able to summon bonus spawns, which is kind of terrifying, right? He's immediately gaining a charge upon the eruption, right, at 4 marks. So that's 4 auto attacks essentially, and then you gain a spawn. And then if you have excess charges that because you're going to be auto attacking more than 4 times, it'll automatically spawn one of those spawns near Set. So with this ability, you can get crazy amounts pretty quickly. If you have a high attack speed, that's going to be about 1 every 2 seconds. So if you're continuing to attack somebody, whether it's the same person or not, you can continually build those spawns pretty quickly. And over a few seconds in a fight, you'll have quite a few of those and be able to burst really, really hard with your 1 or have a lot of movement potential with your 3, and they'll continue to attack any enemies around them. So if any enemies are really close to them, they work a little bit like a trap, and they'll do, or maybe a little bit more like a turret, I guess, a very close range turret, doing some damage around themselves. So interesting ability. I honestly don't know how it's going to work. I don't know if it's going to be crazy OP or if it's going to be underwhelming. Keep in mind, this isn't an insane damaging increase, right? It's actually pretty similar to a normal ability. It's more so that the impact of the change to the passive, so that Set can continue to increase his attack speed, and also the addition of more spawns is going to be a big impact on fights, and we'll see how that goes. The actual auto attack increase in damage is probably not all that big of a deal. It's actually really similar to Erling one. So interesting ability. I can't say how it's gonna go. It might be OP. It might not actually be all that crazy, but we'll see, man. We'll see. So before we really move on, I do want to say I'm really excited about these gods. I think they're very interesting. I think Horus is very cool. I'm afraid of the potential of the ultimate, but I think Horus has a very cool kit in general. And at the very least, the core kit is very cool, and we'll see if the ultimate feels too OP. I actually don't think it will be. I think the ultimate might actually be underwhelming because it takes so long to cast. But it definitely has crazy high potential. It's just a question of whether or not players, especially at a higher level of Smite. I think at low levels, Horus will probably be insane, but at high levels of Smite, I think Horus actually might not be too terrifying for the ultimate alone. I think it'll actually be the core kit that makes Horus a little scarier. But we'll see. We'll see. It depends on how the players play. A lot of it's going to come down to vision control. If they don't have vision of the area at all, oh my God, surprise, Horus just dumped 5 people on your face. You're probably not too happy about it, right? And then Set, I just think is a very cool character. I don't think Set will be too broken. Set should be pretty easy to balance and also very high skill cap, which will be interesting. All right, moving on to the rest of the patch notes, because there are more to the patch notes. Project Olympus, Roll Q, priority points no longer reset when you relog. Ranked and normal conquest no longer share the same pool of priority points. Ranked matchmaking rating, or MMR, gains and loses now properly display at the end of match lobby. Okay, don't really care too much about this stuff. Just seems simple fixes. Co-op versus AI, we don't really care about co-op versus AI. Looks like after that, it's just bug fixes here. Game modes: Assault, decreased potion restoration from 15% instant health and mana heal to 10%, increased potion respawn time from 1 minute to 2 minutes. Don't really care too much about Assault. Ikeval, increased cost from 2450 to 2600. I'm actually a little surprised to see a nerf. A little surprised. I felt like Ikeval actually wasn't quite as impactful as expected. but it is getting a nerf, which is a little surprising to me. Runeforge getting a nerf as well, increased cost from 2300 to 2400, decreased physical power from 55 to 50. I don't think this is really necessary. I think Runeforge is in a fine spot. So I'm actually a little disappointed to see that. It's not a very big nerf, but it is a nerf, and I don't think Runeforge really needs it. Blackthorn Hammer is getting a very decent nerf. Decreased health from 450 to 350. A full 100 HP nerf is a really big nerf to what Blackthorn does as an item. I could still see it being worth picked up, but it's definitely not the crazy must pick that it felt like it was, because it really was too cost effective. So very good change there. I think it's still definitely viable as an item, but it's not so crazy broken that you pick it up on a lot of people. Hasten Katana getting a small nerf. This actually isn't too big of a deal. Increased cost from 2200 to 2300. Decreased attack speed from 25% to 20%. Basically, this just makes it more so you're really buying it for the item and not so much for the stats, which I think is fine. I think that's fine. All right, Bastet. Added a circle targeter element to the ability targeter to convey this ability's area of effect when it hits an enemy. Essentially what that means is because Declaw, there are some abilities that kind of have a circle that detonates where they're fired, so it won't necessarily be in the actual original line, but if it catches somebody, it'll still detonate, if that makes any sense. So they're just kind of enhancing the targeter, making it a little more accurate as to what it actually does. Ganesh buff, is this right? All right, buff duration on Turn of Fate increased from 3 seconds to 4 seconds. Ohm now provides 20 to 60 magic protections as well as physical protections, which is actually a pretty big buff for Ohm. I think that makes sense. I don't know why it didn't exist to begin with. And a damage increase on remove obstacles from 75 to 255 to 90 to 270. That's decent, man. Pretty nice Ganesh or buff to Ganesh early game. That 15 damage will actually make a decent difference in what Ganesh can do in the early stages of the lane. Hui is no longer rooted and can move his camera freely while firing this ability. So that's Sunbreaker's ultimate. Wow, that's decent, man. Hui can now move freely during his ult. He no longer has that channel time to it, or no longer that cast time where he's just stuck still. So that's actually a pretty nice buff to him. That's a little terrifying. I'm kind of curious what that's gonna do. I feel like that's a big deal. That was one thing that you could play around a lot on Hui. It's like, oh, Hui drops ult, use a thing, cast it at him, wreck his face. So yeah, that's actually pretty big. It also made it harder to escape because you were rooted for like a solid second or so. So interesting. Izanami, Death Draws Nigh. Is this her passive? Decrease the threshold of missing health to gain a stack from 15% to 10%. This effect still caps at 20% physical penetration, but Izanami reaches the cap at 50% HP now instead of 25% HP. Yeah, that's her passive. Okay. Change slow duration to be 3 seconds at all ranks on Spectral Projection. All right. Fade away, lowered travel time from 0.6 seconds to 0.5 seconds. Remove the brief self-root at the end of this leap. Oh, so decent buff to the 3 on Izanami as well, making it a little quicker and a little more fluid. Jormungandr, oh, let's see what they're doing. Increased basic attack damage from 9.6 plus 0.64 per level to 11.2 plus 9 or 0.96 per level. Wow. So this is a small buff to his very beginning of the game, and then a very strong buff to his scaling as the game goes on. That's a lot, man. That's a huge amount. So it's going from basically 9.6 level 1 to 11.2, which is what, like a 15% buff or so to his early game damage, which is good. And matters a lot to get around Warrior's Blessing, because Warrior's Blessing wrecks his basic attacks. But then 0.64 per level to 0.96 per level, that would be somewhere around, let's see, how much would he be doing? He should have been doing around 22 damage in max rank before. And now he's going to be doing, right? Now he's going to be doing 30 something, like 32 damage, 31. Yeah, about 31 damage in max rank per auto attack. And that's every little tick. That's actually a really big buff. That really is about a 1.5 times increase in terms of the scaling. Wow. Venomous Haze, not Venomous Hades. Getting risky with my word choice there, man. Consuming clouds with abilities now lowers the cloud duration to 8 seconds instead of 5 seconds. That was a problem for Jormungandr, is that he would lower the cloud duration a little too much, and they weren't really usable as much. So this is a pretty big buff, giving him 3 seconds extra on the clouds instead of just practically removing them. 5 seconds, not a long time, so it really ate away at the cooldown. Consuming Bellow removed damage mitigations while channeling this ability. Oof. This ability no longer goes on cooldown if interrupted during the channel. Okay, so they take away the damage mitigation, but they buff him in terms of no longer going on cooldown, which is actually a really big deal that you could counter that so easily. That's his 2. So overall, buffs to Jormungandr, but they're not super big. I don't really know that that's going to make him very good. I think they still need some big changes. I think the big problem is still that his clouds are tiny, and that makes no sense. So hopefully we'll see some changes to that. Hopefully those clouds will get a lot bigger is really the change that I want to see. King Arthur, broken as hell. Let's see what they did to him. Oh, we're increasing the damage. That's perfect. All right. Increased per slash damage from 10 to 50 to 10 to 70 on Excalibur's Wrath. That's his big ultimate, his terrifying ultimate. Increased per slash true damage from 1.5 to 2%. The slash true damage now deals physical damage. What did it do before? Does that mean, wait, what? Are they saying that it now does physical damage compared to true damage? Or are they saying that it now does physical damage? I don't understand, compared to magical damage. I'm assuming it was true to physical is what they're saying, which is actually a decent nerf. Decreased final hit damage in AoE from 60 to 360 to 50 to 290. Pretty solid nerf in the later stages of the game. Hi-Rez, are you kidding me? Is this really all you're doing? Overall damage change from 120 to 660, plus 14 to 22% of HP true damage, to 110 to 700, plus 17 to 25% of HP physical damage. Okay, so yeah, that is what they're saying. They're saying physical damage instead of true damage. So that's actually a decent nerf to the end of the ultimate, where it's doing all that true damage hit. That's a really, really big reason his ultimate was so strong. So especially in lane, he'll do a lot less damage now, because normally in soul lane, right, you're building at least around 100 protections to deal with the person you're laning against normally. And then, of course, later in the game, it'll even get up to like 200s, maybe even very rarely 300s. So that's a really big nerf to the damage he deals to tanks, which is a big deal. But he is still going to melt squishies pretty hard. So overall, this is a nerf. I think there's more they need to deal with than this, though, because he still has the crazy low cooldown potential of his ultimate. And his orange spin is still disgusting. So I don't know, man. I feel like Arthur needs more of a touch-up than just this. But at least they're doing something to him. Kukulkan added a circle targeter. Again, similar to what we saw on whoever it was. On a person. I don't know. Another Mast at 3. So another circle targeter there. And then Sikkim, the same thing as well. All right, guys, that is the patch. I did not realize that was such a small patch after the gods that were added in. There are also some very cool skins. I'll definitely go ahead and give you guys a link to the patch notes here and a link to the VOD as well, so you can check them out for yourself. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hopefully you got what you needed out of that. I'm trying to make sure that, especially with the god reveals, that I do a good job of actually showing the character in the patch notes. So hopefully that was all good. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. And thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.
I've been seeking for the glory. Say my name. And I've been trying to write my own story in the search for fame. I'm sitting here in this empty room, walls keep tumbling down.